Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Silent Punt Podcast. I'm your host, Henny Himmons. Before we get started, quick shout out to those people that are rating us and subscribing. Um, please do that if you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, YouTube, any of those platforms. That helps us get some visibility and enables me to do some interviews like we're going to do this week. This week, we are going to interview Fox Sports rules analyst Steve Strimling. He works on the college football games on Saturdays. Steve started reffing as a teen quite a while ago, a few decades ago, and worked his way up all the way to be a crew chief in the Pac-12 for a bunch of years. And then a few years ago, transitioned into the instant replay side of things, was the supervisor of the Big Ten Command Center back in 2023 and 2024. This year, moved over to Fox Sports out in LA, working in their command center alongside Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira. And so we talk a lot about a lot of things football. Another shout out to some of my friends in the coaching industry for helping me with some of these questions. Cookie, Fitzy, Kyle, Steve O'Cuddy, and even a basketball guy, Aaron Blackshear, who we interviewed last month from the Houston Rockets. Appreciate you guys helping me with that. Lastly, our comment of the week from last week came from CK Stiefel. Carissa, appreciate you listening. She's not a huge sports fan. We didn't talk any sports last week. This week is all sports. But Carissa set us straight, Travis and I, on spatchcock turkey and chicken. You may have recognized her name. She was on Seinfeld back in the day and is a Silent Punt listener. So we appreciate that, Carissa. Without further ado, here's my interview with Steve Strimling. Steve, welcome to the Silent Punt Podcast. Appreciate you being here. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me. Look
Oh,
forward to it.
thanks for spending the time. I'm going to get right into it with a question. As a former coach, a couple of years ago, college football changed start and stop timing in terms of the game. Reason being, games are going too long. Um, all of our arguments were, well, the games are going too long because there's 15,000 commercials. And then shortly thereafter, maybe a year or two after they put those rules in, they added the 2 minute, as they call it, timeout, not a 2 minute warning. How, how, to me, it's annoying. Is it annoying to you as a ref? I know it's probably certainly challenging, but just the constant monetization of this product.
No, I mean, look, we understand it and we all benefit from it, when you talk
Right.
about the commercial aspect of it. So we get it. I'll just really quick. I remember when the Pac went from Pac-10 to 12, um, and we were doing some scrimmages at Utah. We knew the athletic director. And I said, how does this affect you? And he pointed to a new building. He says, we're getting a new hospital.
Oh
And this is
gosh.
going to serve that. And it sort of struck that we understand the money is a benefit, so we have to work within it. So from that standpoint, the timeouts and the standing around, we get it. I think the rules part of it, certainly that was part of it. They also looked at the pace of play at the time with the new quick offenses. That all sort of merged into one time. We looked at the NFL model in the game. So as from an officiating standpoint, we certainly understood it. The 2 minute timeout became more of a culmination. There were too many rules in college for timing at different points of the game, and they tried to get it standardized so it was understandable to all. It was able to be officiated better, especially as you move up from one level to the other. So overall, I think it's a good thing. It's understandable. We get stats all the time that relate to plays per game, injuries, time of game. They all sort of put that together into a nice product. There's no pressure given by the rules or the conferences to officials to make things slower or quicker, as long as your pace of the game is, they want a quick pace of the game, a realistic pace of the game with following through with how the rules are made to give
Um,
equity to both sides.
you hit on something that I wasn't going to ask about, but I would guess you have a unique viewpoint. You mentioned, the pace of the game and plays and how that has changed over the years. Just as someone, I haven't been coaching for 4 or 5 years now, and it got to a point where they were going really, really fast. Um, just watching now, it seems like maybe that has started to ebb a little bit and gone back the other way.
I believe it's situational now. I think when it first came in, it was, wear them out, just keep going. We got more than you do. Now I think if you watch, it's situational. They'll do it at up tempos at certain times of the game as maybe more of a way to keep the opponent from substituting. That you see a certain pattern. You certainly see it after big plays down the field with replay that, let's,
Oh, let's
we'll
get
try to get
going.
going. The other thing is if you look as a big play enters the red zone to keep the defense from getting a bigger package in, they will go quick on first downs. So I think it's more situational. They'll put it in the middle, but I don't think we see the 220 to 30 play games. It's more of an anomaly than it is a standard. I remember those early years, the Pac-12 was averaging over 200 plays a game. I think that's down in the 180s. And there was concern, obviously with player safety and health.
Well, that kind of leads into the next thing in terms of pace of play and types of plays. I know referees watch a lot of film. Even at the Division III level, guys would come in before our games and they'd need a room to watch film. But that film is, rules and regulations. I'm wondering how much film a referee watches either during the season or in the off season about football schematically. Like that's outside zone, that's pin and pull, that's four verticals. How much do they have to know of that part of it?
Yeah. Back in 2020, and we worked in the XFL, part of our training staff was an NFL officials, and they brought that to us as part of officiating, is scouting the teams, understanding formations, and how are we going to officiate? Because, it's sort of like, I'm going to equate it to baseball. If there's, runner on first, if they hit it to my right, I'm doing this. They hit it to my left. So they brought that sort of to the officiating. So much more than maybe I was aware of. But there are people on every group or every crew that do that. They will scout what they run when they're in this. These plays are more possible. We're going to watch for that. Coaches would always tell us the reason there is or isn't a foul on a play is because this is the technique, and obviously they can't do that. And didn't always resonate, but we would always say, well, I'm sure you taught them well, but maybe this play didn't go right. But what you're saying is much more than before. And I will tell you, and we can start with the SCIAC in Division III, but all the Division I officials, from the moment they get off the field, film work is every day until that next game. And in the off season, maybe you'll take a couple of weeks, but there is film you watch every week. This is a part of that.
Yeah, that I think that's something people don't understand. And I'm going to ask you about big picture compensation in a second in terms of the NFL, but working into the NFL, there's always been arguments about those guys not quote unquote being full time because they have other careers or whatnot.
Yeah.
Is there a pathway to make that happen? And if it were to happen at the NFL level, there has to be, repercussions for college and the levels below. Is that something that would ever happen?
I don't believe in college it can happen because, college, there were independent contractors. It's not union. They don't want more employees. It just, the compensation will be, I'll say, everyone for the most part has a job, or maybe some people are retired. In the NFL, in the last several years, I'm sure it's possible with the compensation that this is for many people their main job as well, or maybe they're retired. So it's very different. My personal, I know they tried the full time. I would say what might become is there's 17 crews, maybe there's 17 full time, because maybe it will help in the season get the message out better to the crews. Here's what we need to be doing right. Certainly, they have their evaluators and their trainers, and they're getting out the message, but maybe more direct within a crew. The referees have to be involved. Maybe it's a referee, and then in the off season, if they are full time and are compensated accordingly, they're digging deeper into certain plays or certain rules to make sure they're, if they feel they need to be better understood or better examined or how to officiate them better. Maybe that's possible. Maybe it's 17 officials, but I can't see officials doing more during the week than they do now, whether they work
Already.
somewhere else or not. It legitimately occupies people that are at the highest level. Not everybody, obviously, but it's part of 24/7 during the season. It is every day. It is something. Um, so to say you're going to go full time, great. Pay me a lot more money and I'll do it. But
I was just going to
um,
say that.
you want to
Yeah,
get
right.
something out of it, type of thing. But I
Right.
could
Well,
see for the NFL, of not everybody, but I could see maybe a different version where some officials are full time and they're responsible for things to their crew, to making sure things get handed off and doing their own work during the week to getting it more prepared. Obviously, they do it, but in a different level, different scale. But um,
the as you're talking, what that makes me think about is, one of the things I have a good friend here in Wisconsin that is a high school and college referee, and I've known referees, and it's just so hard to get um, people in general to go into that field, let alone quality people. And you see videos all the time of youth sports and high school and all of those things that it's really hard to get people to do that. Um, I have seen in my own career, I wanted to coach Division III football because that's the level I played and I loved it. And I wasn't ever thinking, oh, I can go get rich doing this. Um, but I have seen in the past 20, 25 years, there are way more people going into the coaching industry because they know that there is a possibility of a payday at the end of
sure,
the rainbow. That's why I asked the question. I'm wondering, like, if there is a light at the end of the tunnel for that 22-year-old guy that just got finished playing Division II football and wants to stay in the game, and is teaching high school or whatever, that he's going to maybe stick with it a little longer once he gets married and has kids. And if there is that next rung that he can get to, that, hey, maybe I can feed my family doing this.
100%. I mean, where I am is seeing ex players or part of the game that go towards officiating. There are programs in the NFL for ex players, and they're sort of excelled through the system, expedited, and not unfairly, but there is a program, so they're placed in places. We work with them, but clearly, or to be honest, there's a lot of second and third generation officials, and the compensation today from 20 years ago is huge. You can, like I said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for that being your main profession, and it will. So absolutely there are people there. Now, at the same time, we get applications. Hey, I've worked 2 years of high school. How do I apply for the NFL? Okay, might have skipped a few steps along the way, but it is out there, and it's there's a lot of people that if you're doing the $50 Pee Wee game and your buddy's making the $200 Division III game, I want that. And at the
Right.
Division III, that $700 Division II game, and on and on and on down the line. And that is the goal for a lot of people, and they'll stick with it a little more. Um,
What I have, I've over the years Googled periodically what an average NFL guy makes. I'm guessing off the top of my head couple hundred grand.
My understanding, I don't know, is the last collective bargaining um, significantly more than that. And
Okay.
I believe, and again, I'm speaking not by not 100% knowledge.
Right.
I think it's a pool money. The union, seniority is a big part of it, but it is much north of the number for the top senior officials. And then, when you get in the playoffs, my guess is somewhere double of what you just said.
Okay.
But it takes a long time to get there. So obviously, then the starting would be significantly more than it was, and it's significantly more than NCAA football.
Got it. All right. One of the things as a former coach that annoys me watching football now with people is I will say something and they with me about something that I literally spent my life watching film and doing. I'm like, how am I even in an argument with this? What annoys you if you're watching football with a group of people or whatever, and like, I'm an Eagles fan. Anytime the Eagles lose, the officials are responsible.
Sure.
Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are everybody's responsible. What are things that annoy you about what people think about referees that is just wrong?
Yeah, I mean, in general, that there's some sort of script, some sort of vendetta. There's something rigged that the conference, the home team, or certainly today when you look at major college football, look, if I'm a commissioner of a conference, I want as many teams in that playoff. And now I have this certain group of people that could not influence it intentionally, but by what they do, things could go either way. That's a hard line, so deal with it. When people come up to me, if they and they know me, if they ask about why was terrible, I'll try to say, maybe I'll say, yes, they missed it. Here's why. Here's what the rule is. Here's what we're supposed to do. Blah blah blah. But if it gets to that point where they're just cheating, it's like, my comment, gee, I'm sorry, and then I'm
Yeah.
in another
End of
room.
discussion.
It
Right.
is the end of discussion.
Right.
I don't go out. I'm with officials a lot, or my family, or people that know me, and that's all I can tell them. When it gets to be that it's a plot, you sort of got to end it right there. And I'm not big online guy. Every once in a while, someone will tell me what someone tweeted, and you read it, and what do you do? What sort of bothers me is the people like a commissioner of a conference, not the supervisor officials. He's the commissioner of they support officials, but boy, I don't think they do it enough, because that's just going to be, 400 more backlashes they got to deal with.
Yeah.
It's always
What's in it for
been,
them?
it's always been, we'll handle it behind closed doors. That's it. We'll leave it. There's been more transparency, more statements. What I found is difficult. It's hard for anyone to come out and go, the officials did not get this call right. The outcome, yeah, it changed that outcome for that. This call was not right. They made 72 calls that game. They had 12 penalties. 69 of them were graded correctly.
Right.
Unfortunately, they got that wrong. And that's part of the game. The problem is today with replay, nothing, it's just not that part of the game.
Right.
According to everyone, everything should be fixed.
I have a question I'm going to ask you about that particular part in a couple minutes. But what you talked about with a conspiracy and a plot, I have this discussion with folks quite often, it seems, whether it's sports or just information in general. When there is a lack of knowledge or understanding as humans, we fill that gap with something that makes sense to us. And the easiest thing for someone that doesn't understand what you're talking about is to just say, well, the league wants the Rams to win or wants whomever to win.
Sure.
Um, okay. Every summer, getting ready for a football season, I had to watch, the referee and the rule points of emphasis for this particular year. To what extent, one way or the other, yes or no, are any of those things kind of decreed by the NCAA, conferences, TV networks, or specific team stuff? Or is it all just germinating from officials? How does that happen in the off season?
Well, let's for NCAA, we'll say those videos, same as we watch, you get the thing. So the group works with the conference supervisors, which obviously the Power Four or the Division One have more influence. They will have multiple meetings on rules, what should be changed, things that happened that really weren't covered. They will go to the rules committee, which is made up of athletic directors, coaches. There's actually a prop committee in NCAA football. I'm not sure why, but they will have coaches from other sports. They will work with the medical teams. They will look at those statistics. And from that, they will disseminate, especially points of emphasis. Really, if you watch, haven't really changed that much. They are. That points of emphasis, obviously, player health and safety is one. Sportsmanship is always number two. They will address specific rules or loopholes in rules that caused plays that didn't seem to go right. They will look at our mechanics to make sure there's no holes in them. Those will be, the point of emphasis for officials. So in the end, it goes back up to the National Supervisor of Officials, which is currently Steve Shaw, and he has several committees. There's people who write mechanics. There's lower, there's Division One FCS. They use maybe 7 officials. Some use 6. So there's people in charge of all of that. So that's sort of how it's done in the off season and culminates in the new rules, new interpretations, points of emphasis, mechanics changes. TV is involved very little. It will do with mechanics and timing of the game, and they don't influence. But how long is timeout? When are we taking the timeouts? The injury timeouts versus the 2-minute timeout. Those things they work with the broadcast partners. They're very much involved, and I think each broadcast partner has probably an ex-football official that works with them. They often work as a rules analyst, but they're sort of they keep very much abreast of the game, and they can point out to the media partners how it's going to be done, what are things going to be done, what to look for to help them in their broadcast.
You mentioned something in that answer that I didn't have written down as something to ask you about, but I want to touch on it briefly, and I'll kind of say what my understanding of it is, and you say yay or nay. You talked about the mechanics of actual officiating. That is, in layman's terms, this particular official on this play is supposed to be looking at these particular players and looking for these particular things. And I can tell you as a coach, like that was really the only thing that I ever got mad about with officials is if someone made a call that he was not supposed to be making a call. I knew what the mechanics were and where his eyes were supposed to be. And if that flag came from someone that wasn't supposed to be looking at that, that was like hey, that's my gotcha. Is that in general the definition of mechanics is the guys are looking at what they're supposed to be looking at and communicating to each other in the proper way?
Yeah, if you think of it, there's 22 players, and let's say there's 7 or 8 officials. They all start in a particular spot. And as the players move around, we also have to move around so we continue to watch. And based on the play, there are times you're like, wait, why is that person? But then you look at that particular play, you look on the field, sometimes all 22 players are on one side of the field. Well, we can't have those 3 officials on the other side who are supposed to be looking at their side. They're sort of like these big circles that they officiate with. If that circle's moved, their eyes move with it. So I will give credit that sometimes you might not see that. But yeah, it's not only what they're looking, is the movement of them to get into that position. We don't want to be sprinting all over the place, but small movements on the field put us in the best possible place to look at. And I would say, for the most part, if we get to the right spot, most officials have good judgment if they're in the right spot looking at the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a player. If you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to be good at it. And if you're doing something that you're not normally doing, you're not going to be as good at it.
Right.
All right, this is my last question, and then I have a handful of others after that that I'll go through quickly from coaches across the country. You mentioned earlier, in terms of officials moving up, how maybe a former player or someone can get expedited up the system. I got in a really interesting discussion with my sister of all people a few years ago when the Eagles made the Super Bowl a couple years back. They had one of the first female coaches on their staff, and she's like, "Oh, what do you think about that?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think it's real great." And she got all mad, and I said, "Well, take a beat. Most guys work 20, 25 years as coaches trying to get into the NFL, and in that initial wave, whatever that was, 5 or 6 years ago, there were some women that expedited the system pretty quickly, and that was my hang up at that time with it. I could care less if you're a girl or a guy. If you're the best coach, you're the best coach. But and I had that same issue with nepotism in coaching. So and so's son is the GA on the staff, and all of a sudden he's the offensive coordinator. Stuff like that bothered me. Is that do you see those issues at all in your profession? Is it different? Is there a reason behind it? I've watched pro football my whole life, and I've old enough to have seen multiple guys with the same last name refereeing games in the NFL. I have no idea what maybe those guys paid their dues. I'm sure they did to a certain extent, but have you seen any of that coming up through officiating?
100, yeah, every time. But just quick story. One of the first times that happened where I was involved was a young official in an area, and that one of the NFL scouts said, "Hey, let's get this guy." And they said, "Well, he hasn't put in this amount of time, so no." And then we sort of said, "But yeah, I sort of saw him, but maybe he has it." Well, he officiated the Super Bowl last year. So the point to all that, it's going to happen. It happens in business. It happens in life. I'm good. I'm okay with it. But the bottom line is that person has to be good at what they're doing. They have to put in the time and the effort. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. When push comes to shove and all other things are fairly equal, I could see I'll just call them an expedited official, whether it's a male, a female, ex-player, a family member, however you want to do it. When push comes to shove and all other things are equal, I'm fine with the next opportunity going to them. It's part of the program. I don't want to take away from someone who's put in the exact same amount of time and is every bit as good. I just think you work with it. There are some people that are like, oh, that person only because, but yet they're a good official. And I've seen people got pushed through the system too quick where they weren't ready for the next and sort of got hung out to dry,
Hmm.
never got to come back. So it works negative, it works positive. Um, some of those people in the NFL, I do know Sean Hockley, he is very good. He's every bit as good as his father. He was taught well, but he puts in his own time
Yeah.
and effort to be good. So it can work both ways as long as the person in the position is doing the work, is genuinely good at it, is willing to put in the work, is good. I think we afford them the opportunity. I work in another business outside of the sports field, and no different. I have family members. Some were great at what they did, some weren't, and they sort of stagnated over, to another area. So I think we should make the best of all situations, and when someone's
Yeah, and
they're good.
I think also the other side of it is if and when that happens to you and you've worked really hard for it and you're prepared for it and you're in that situation, people like that sometimes have a target on their back, and some people are waiting for the first mistake or whatnot. So it's as
Absolutely.
with any situation, there's two sides to the coin.
Yeah, I would feel that someone genuinely gets left out that deserves it.
Yeah.
But you always say coaching, I was the same way. Sometimes the door opens for three people and there's six qualified people. The three that don't get picked, does that mean that they got screwed somehow or something? Not necessarily, not always. There's always someone different making the decisions too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Every situation's
the
different.
same in officiating. Look at supervisor of officials in the NFL. They've had multiple changes. I would assume that as they changed, who they're looking to hire might change a little bit also. So doesn't make it wrong or right or unfair. It's just it is part of life.
Such is life. Okay, a couple reasonably rapid fire
Okay.
footballish questions. Um, do you think college football might ever adopt what the NFL has done with the kickoff?
Not in the near future.
How come?
They don't have. It's mainly the injuries, um, and
That was going to be my follow-up is like
they
I
don't
have
have the data that the injuries are out of hand compared to normal play. I think if there is, then they will seriously have to look at that.
that you don't have to answer this. This is my
Okay.
2 cents, but uh, um, that's the thing that I've spoken to people about. In my opinion about the NFL is the NFL does a very good job of putting fourth players' safety as an issue, and I don't know that they always back that up. And as somebody that coached for as long as I did, concussions on that particular play alone, I've always said I would love to see the data that made them change that. Um, but moving on, another kind of injury-esque thing. This was a question from a DC buddy of mine, not Washington, DC, a defensive coordinator. He asked, and back in the day, this was called spearing, when you use the
Mhm.
crown of your helmet. I don't hear that word all that much anymore, but how come defenders get called for that at like a 10x rate than offensive guys?
So there's more defensive tackling, attacking the quarterback, attacking the runner, attacking the receiver than there are blockers in blindside block against defenseless players. And then I take out the runner completely. Um, we are having a bounty on the first official that calls targeting on a runner. We've identified two this year in
Like a
NCAA.
good bounty or a bad bounty?
No, good bounty. Like, okay, you
Okay.
called it. You're the first one.
Okay.
Um, but I think the amount of plays on the defensive side against offensive players
Yeah.
in a position to get targeted are extremely higher than the opposite. So you'll get offensive players will be on the call of a blindside block with targeting, if you hear that. So where they
Hmm.
block there in the NFL, they have use of the helmet rules. The college, I'm sorry, high school still uses spearing, butt blocking, and all of that stuff, and
Do
that
they?
they have penalties for each one. I know the college rule and all that. I really feel the high school model is actually a better model, but
That's
than the
interesting.
automatic ejection, because within targeting you have some that are just barely and some that are, oh, that's the one we hate.
Egregious. Yeah.
And but they all have to fall in the same penalty situation. But um we've seen we saw, especially in the first 3 years, player behavior changed unbelievably for the better. It really
Yeah.
does. It's sort of an anomaly now, and now we're getting it's so technical and all that. But I'll leave that alone.
It was horrific as a coach when it first started to happen because it's like all these things that are just completely normal, and the only way the looking back on it, the kids and the players and the coaches are going to learn is if you're disciplined for it and you get
Yeah,
a 15-yard flag. And the other part that what your answer reminded me of is the old face mask penalty when it was either 15 yards or it's 5 yards. You just make it 15 yards and you make everybody's life a little bit easier. There's way less judgment to it.
sure,
Um,
sure.
all right. Did any head coaches stand out to you? And you don't have to name names, but as like, oh, this guy's he calls me over, he's always right. Or this guy calls me over and it's always going to be a problem to the point where I'm going to try to ignore him as much as I can.
Um, as far as a coach always being right, I'd like to say that never happened to me. Um, there were coaches that the discussion when you went over, I enjoy the discussion. They would teach me things about technique, and a lot of it would be in actually the scrimmages at the school. Hey coach, this is holding. No, here's what he's doing. Oh, okay, wait. And then we would go through how we're taught, and they would tell us their techniques. And that was good. And so there were several coaches that would speak to you on that level, and then you go, you know what? I'll take a second look at that, or I'll look at it different next time. Or if you're in a game, I hope I didn't get it wrong. I'm going to look at that film. I'm going to correct it. So there were several that I really enjoyed talking to, because when you went over, they were going to give you their opinion and why they think you was incorrect, or they'd ask you why you did call it so they could help teach them. And if we truly saw something, you could explain, hey, you taught them this, but they didn't do it right. They got their hands outside. Well, he's supposed to have his hands inside. Okay, well, there was the problem. That's how I saw it. Um, there are there were a few that only wanted to be a sort of a pain and a negative, and those were like, okay, I'll go over, I'll listen. There were very few, but there were some, I think it was 3 or 4, that it was like, no, we're not doing this. You're not a nice person. You have no really right to do it. And I would treat those in the way that they needed to be handled. I never was opposed to going over. Um, but I dealt with each one sort of in those groups that we discussed. Very few were just actually, I'm going to say, very mean people.
Yeah.
Very few.
I would say coaching on the flip side was, and mine was at the Division 3 level, but very similar. We had 10 regular season games a year, and I would say 6 or 7 of the crews, it's just, hey, how you doing? It's normal. And then there's maybe one where you see that guy walking in and it's like, oh
Head
crap.
goes down.
And then you see a couple come in and it's like, oh, hey man, how you doing? And like you have really good discussions with them. Again,
Yeah.
like probably most relationships.
Yeah.
So, um, do you guys ever, you're doing a little bit of the analyst stuff now, and Dean and Mike, is there ever a time, I wonder about this with the guys that call games too, that you call somebody out for something they've done wrong, and it's like, that guy's my friend, and some of that stuff going on?
Sure. And we have to remember, we're not going at the person, it's the call.
Right.
A good person can make a call we don't agree with. There's 35 things that go into every call, but yeah, I mean, I'm on every week. I'm removed a few years. I still talk to them. I consider some of my best friends out there, and I'm like, this one didn't go well. Okay, let's make sure Mike and Dean are the best. I mean, you can't work with. I mean, both of those were head of the NFL. I mean, you can't have two better people to work with, and they are so pro officiating. You can have a bad call, you can have a missed call. Now, don't have a lot of them.
Right.
Don't have ones we just talked about on how to make sure you don't do it and don't screw up a rule. You got to call out the situation. So what we look at is we'll call out the situation, don't make it personal, and and then move from there. That analyst job is to really inform the fan and the media what happened, what should be done via the rules aspect of it, and why that might be called that way, and what might be the outcome of that, and definitely stay away from anything negative personally.
Right. Speaking of instant replay, I have not, that's like rule changes. Things seem to change yearly. Is there anything that is not reviewable right now that you either think should be or is coming down the pike that, yeah, this might change in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I'm involved with the UFL, and if you watch that model, it is legitimately not officiated from the command center, but clear and obvious things are corrected. And those are two individuals, Mike and Dean. And so there is no judgment to the left and the right. When you look at NCAA football, you have 800 replay officials. Now they're all going to command centers. So now you have 4 or 5 people in command centers. So you're bringing that judgment and rules knowledge down to 20 or 30 people. But yet, you still look at it. So when you watch the NFL, you hear more about assists and certain things that objectively by video looking, they can assist the crew. Was the quarterback in or out of the tackle box? When we worked and we had things, it was like, okay, you can see something on film, you could tell me a fact. If it's close where you're making a judgment, I don't want to know about it. I only want to know the facts. So there are more things through replay that will come down. I think the NFL is leading. You just got to get it to a smaller group of people that when you say clear and obvious, go to that bar of 100 people. And when you say clear and obvious, do you ever get to 99 or 100?
No.
Probably not. And that's the issue of going slower and adding more things in replay. It really is you got guys on the field that have to judge it in real time. And now you have a large group that are, you don't want to say re-officiating. It's, they always say clear and obvious, but you get those ones that, what's clear and obvious is how clear and obvious do you want it? So
Right.
as soon as the group of officials replay, which are getting much better, the command centers are getting much better, the supervisors of replay much better. As soon as it gets more and more, and they have equitable technology, then you'll see more things like the NFL probably reach the NCAA level because people can't stand a mistake that they can look at 10 times, 2 minutes later decide it was a mistake, as opposed to the guy who has 2 seconds in real time,
Right.
people crossing his face. I think they forget that human element of the game.
Yeah, that I have that discussion with lay people in terms of football and my official friends, and that's something that's really hard for people that are just watching the game to understand the difference in that. And one of the things that you just mentioned that I think has been really awesome in the last couple of years, I notice it in games, is when there is that video assist and it's like something that would have taken 3, 5 minutes is just, it's not, it's a blink of an eye. I think a lot of people don't even notice it because it happens so quickly.
Yep. Yeah, I think some of it is actually the media people, the producers of games. Some of them could be the best replay officials. They get to the shot. If I always we've talked about in replay, they have their machines with the angles and they look for everything. I always said just have one guy watch TV. They'll get to that shot. After that shot, you don't need to look anymore. So we can get to things like one shot you can call right down on the field. With the communications today is fantastic. You don't need to bring a guy over to watch it. Even having him run over, by the time he runs over half the time, you've made that. We've done in the UFL, no more going over. They'll put it up on the
Yeah.
scoreboard. But again, we're watching, major college football, Division One. But remember, Division Three, Division Two, Division One, smaller conferences, they want that same. They have replay. They don't have the same technology,
Right.
and sometimes we forget about that. That
Yeah.
they
And that
they don't
you
have
hit
that.
on the part about going over. I've had that discussion with people in the NFL and major college football. Like that's a TV show thing happening right now
Well,
because
yeah, the main reason they go over to look is more to understand because replay can look at what they need to look at. But then if something changes, there's other rules involved and replay have to stay up
uh,
with the rules, but nobody should be more knowledgeable than that crew on the field or that guy with the
right.
white hat. So that's part of it. Um, I would say, and thank God for me, when they show that referee running 35, 40 yards over, I'm thinking that maybe my dinner the night before, I should have changed what I ate, but sometimes
Um,
that's a little harrowing.
but like you said, there are bigger things at play sometimes than just the call. That call has repercussions of down and distance and clock and all that stuff that they have to be fully versed in. I will wrap this up with one last question from a guy that coached at major college level for quite a while and had multiple incidents where his head coach had to have a police escort leaving the stadium because of a result of a game and bettors and all that stuff. Um, are you guys, the major college guys, taken care of in that regard? You know, an SEC game and it's Georgia and Alabama, and there's a call at the end. Um, in that regard, are you guys taken care of?
Yeah, major college football, and it goes down to most levels, but the Division II, Division III, it's you might have the SID in charge of the officials, but they have an assigned, I'll say, police or security officer. It could be police or whatever, designated to the crew, especially any type of emergency, everything. They are to be escorted on and off the field. If you watch them at the end of the game, they sort of all gather together near the tunnel, and someone leads them. If there's a major because of a call or situation that warrants it. Most larger things, depending on if they dress at the game or don't dress at the game, they have police escorts in or out. We had issues in the Pac-12 about the amount of that, even with normal situations. Just people see officials and act differently, and we had to not bargain, but we resecured ourselves. I would say in the Pac-12, where we were a little more taken care of, only because nothing happens until it happens. So we were just thinking, God forbid anything happens, let's make sure in advance they are taken care of. The NCAA has come out with, if there's ever an issue where you're getting, with modern internet and everything, someone's texting you or your family, they have, through the NCAA, you can file a report, you're confident. And if anything, and unfortunately, a couple of things have happened with officials and that type of thing, I would say 1,000% they take care of it right away. They're right on it. They look at what could happen, what are we going to do in case. So I believe, to the extent that we should be well taken care of, and I think they do a good job in that.
Awesome. You know what games you're working this weekend?
I am being a monitor. My on the air is over for the season because
Okay.
we get Dean Blandino back in the studios for college and NFL as they go to their Thursday games and other games that he's able to be with us. So um, I've experienced that. I've done that. Now I'm gonna monitor with them and watch them work and finish up the last week of college, and I actually will monitor the rest of the NFL season with them.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Steve Strimling, very much appreciate you spending the time with us.
Appreciate you having me.
All right.